Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So let's do the SPIRE project updates. We will be looking at what happened in SPIRE during the past year. Share some updates in terms of new features in the project, also some numbers. So the big thing that happened is graduation, as we mentioned earlier. SPIFFE and SPIRE are now CNCF graduated projects, and that's a major achievement for the project, and we are all very happy for that. And I think it's really due to the community that we have, to the support that we have from the community, and so thank you all for that. We introduced experimental Windows support that was presented in KubeCon Europe on May this year. As you know, SPIRE is mature and has been gaining a lot of maturity in Unix environments, and introducing a new platform is not something trivial. So we started with an experimental support because we know that like the level of parity with the Unix platform is not the same, but we are working on filling the gaps. More and more features has been adding. We have been working on that. Some of the things that are still pending, we still have some work to do in terms of standardizing the workload endpoint specification that does not yet support or is explicit about how the workload API is exposed using a named pipe endpoint. So that is still work to do. There's some work to do with the libraries. We have the SPIFFE library has been updated to support the use of named pipes with the workload API, but the support in other languages is not yet there, and this is in part because of the lack of support for named pipe transports in the C++ gRPC library. So we will probably need to work to provide this support, collaborating with others in the ecosystem, and develop and possibly upstream some changes to libraries like gRPC. So that's the work that we have ahead, but still we are very happy that we had a good reception of the support on Windows, and we have companies trying and deploying SPIRE on Windows, so that's very good. It was introduced a privileged API on the SPIRE agent, and what we call this the delegated identity API that allows authorized workloads to obtain SBITs and also bundles on behalf of workloads that cannot be attested by SPIRE agent directly, and there are a lot of situations that can happen. So this new API will help to provide SPIRE there on those environments that were before was not possible. The way that this works is that the authorized workload provides SPIRE-ation the selectors that would normally be obtained during the workload station. This API is served over the admin API endpoint. So that's the same endpoint that is exposed as the admin endpoint that we had in SPIRE-ation. Let me see the next. So there has been some updates in related projects. We have introduced the SPIRE controller manager, that is a Kubernetes controller manager that facilitates the registration of workloads and the establishment of the federation relationships. This is still in a pre-prod phase, but is the direction that the project wants for this, and is the way that we recommend. We have recently deprecated the SPIRE Kubernetes workload registrar, and we're trying to not maintain that anymore, and instead direct to the SPIRE controller manager. We have now SPIFFE v2 stable releases. Before we had beta releases, and now we consider SPIFFE v2 stable. So we are having those releases now as stable releases. So let's look at some numbers. In the past year, we had 27 releases. We try to have a minor release each month, and I think that we have been able to have a consistent cadence for that. We have one SPIRE release each month, and we probably need to make some patch. Mostly all the patch releases that we have been doing due to security issues are because of the Go toolchain that is updated and has some impact in security. So we make a release when that happens. If you look at the added new features, we have around 35 new features during this year, 65 bug fixes and improvements, and almost 300 merged PRs that were done across 24 different contributors. So it's good to see the community contributing to the project, many different companies contributing with a lot of the new features that we have been adding in SPIRE are actually contributions from the community. So what's coming in the upcoming releases of SPIRE? We will be adding a new key manager plugin that will support the Google Cloud key manager, and in the same way that you're currently have the AWS KMS plugin, you will also be able to have the managed signing keys by the Google Cloud key manager. So that's good, and it's it's coming hopefully in the next release. We also have a PR that's it's closer to be merged for the 6-store support through the validation of container images signatures. So the Kubernetes workload attester plugin will gain some capabilities to validate the images signatures through the 6-store. And 6-store is a new standard for signing, verifying, and protecting software. And this is particularly important to be able to prevent software supply chain attacks. And you can use that. You can use SPIRE with 6-store for that. So that's something that we are also hoping to release soon. There has been a lot of requests over the years to be able to have some way to customize the SBITs that are minted by SPIRE, with some way to have to customize the fields of the SBITs. So a new plugin type is being introduced. That's the Credential Composer plugin. We already have the proto definition for that, and we will be supporting that in SPIRE very soon. Also, a work that we have been doing recently, and it's today introduced in SPIRE, but only available through a feature flag. So it's only like available for development, but we hope that we can have this feature soon available. It's to be able to allow for node reattestation in ashes that can be reattested. That's something also that we have been waiting for a while to have in SPIRE. And there is a lot of work around forced rotation and revocation. There has been a proposal that Evan worked on some time ago, and for that, and Marcos has been working very hard in the past few months to try to have an implementation for that, and hopefully we think that in the upcoming weeks we will have some news to share, and demonstration and feedback to get on that work. That's will be very important in the scenarios where a key is compromised, and you need to make a forced rotation. So we are all looking forward to that, and it's also becoming a reality, hopefully very soon also. And that's what I have related with the SPIRE updates. What are the questions?
This is your time to ask anything about SPIRE.
We have a few questions here.
So I'm curious if any for
that. The question is, there was a SPIRE operator. What is there, like, are there any more details to share about it? Like, what is the work? and when it's gonna be starting, I guess.
Sorry, I'm not sure with which of the features are referring to.
SPIRE operator. Can you give a little bit more details about that? The question was about SPIRE operator and when it's what's the plan for it when it's going to be implemented.
SPIRE operator.
So is this in reference to a Kubernetes operator?
Kubernetes
Something-
operator?
Yes, SPIRE Kubernetes operator.
Guys, just recently, I think maybe Wednesday before yesterday or sometime here, I started thinking whether SPIRE need to provide a SPIRE operator. So I will know more about the context and very actually not people.
Okay, yeah, so all right, so here are more details about the question. There was some discussion somewhere. Was it in Slack? Maybe Slack or a GitHub about possibility of building SPIRE Kubernetes operator. Is there anything like this on the roadmap, or that was just like people discussing?
Yeah, I'm personally not aware of any plan for that. I'm not sure if any other.
Yeah, I think that it's something that we would like and we know that we need, but I don't at the same time. So like probably just conversation in Slack and acknowledgement that like, oh yeah, that would be great. Like we could really use that. I don't think that we have any like maintainers signed up to do that right now. You know, maintainers, like it's really, really hard to kind of get maintainers to sign on to these like larger kind of works, you know, and when we do, it's usually related to something that is like fairly critical to the project, like the force rotation replication stuff is really important. Not that an operator isn't important, but that, you know, we don't have anyone like signed up to do it right now. That said, if there is interest, like if somebody was willing to raise their hand and say, hey, like I'm willing to carry this work forward, we would be more than happy to work with you on like scoping that out, trying to figure out what it would look like and kind of guiding you through the process.
I've started working on one as a way to just get more used to deploying SPIRE and kind of what it takes to do that at scale. So, you know,
I don't know if you guys hear this, but Dennis saying that he started working on their operator, and I know that Andrew Hardin also worked on SPIRE Controller Manager. That's kind of have this few concepts for federation and registration, but there is no kind of full-fledged operator work for sure. Would be great if there would be some discussions around this, I guess. So.
We're happy to help support that work however we can, you know, and Dennis, obviously, if you can open source or contribute, that would be amazing. I mean, whether it lives, you know, in your org or whether it lives in SPIFFE org, like we can figure all those things out. I think community need is the community need.
Yeah, but
I think that's a good idea, and you know, I wasn't sure that there was a desire in the community for something like this. So if there is, then yeah, I'd be happy to move forward on that.
awesome. Great to
I have
hear.
a question on the SPIRE Federation. Is there federation improvements or new features setting up in SPIRE Federation?
Any SPIRE Federation improvements, new features coming in?
SPIRE Controller Manager supports federation fairly easily. So that's something to look at. I don't know if you're running Kubernetes or not. I know that HPE has been working on a project to try to make federation like line of sight requirements a little bit easier to swallow. But I also think that is fairly early works. And so I think there's still quite a ways to go there.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I think there are a bunch of questions in the virtual one too. So I think there's one on reattestation, Evan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to answer that, but maybe Augustine wants to answer it, or one of the other maintainers wants to answer as well.
What's the question? Let me see.
The question is related to node reattestation. Is it initiated by server to force agent to be reattested? I think there are a couple of plus ones on that too.
So it's for the agents that support the reattestation that are non-tofu, to be able to go through a reattestation process that will make it more secure.
Maybe I can expand on that a little bit. So right now, when an agent joins the network, it attests one time when it comes up, and so it goes through the process of handing the server some sort of credential or something that the server can verify, and goes through attestation, builds up its selector list, and then it gets an SPIFFE out of that process. At that point, like we never attest that agent again nominally. Like it talks to the server using that SPIFFE that it obtained at attestation time, and it renews that SPIFFE periodically, and that's how it stays in contact with the server and stays joined to the network. So reattestation is about 4 node attestation methods that can support this, instead of having the SPIFFE renewal process happen occasionally to like get a new SPIFFE, where the credential to renew is the SPIFFE itself. Instead, the agents just go back through the whole attestation flow again to obtain a new SPIFFE. And so at that time, like we can reevaluate the agent's credentials, we can reevaluate selectors, that sort of thing. So it's very useful from a security standpoint for methods that allow it to just kind of make sure that the agent is still good, still valid.
Just follow-up question on that. Curious, like how would that work on in nested setup of SPIRE server, and where does it get triggered from? Is it from the parent server, or can you do it as well from the nested server, or it doesn't matter at all?
Yeah, I think the flow is fairly agnostic. Like this isn't something where the server like kicks the agent off and says like, agent, like you need to reattest to come back into the fold. This is just something that the agent participates in,
okay,
as part of its SPIFFE renewal.
Well, the agent will eventually fall off if it refuses to participate in this scheme, right? Like if we force the agent to do reattestation in order to renew, and it chooses to not do this, eventually its SPIFFE will expire and it'll fall off.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so it's effectively enforced on the server side implicitly, because like we're going to say, hey, we're going to cease to rotate the agent SPIFFE until you produce another attestation. And so the relationship is immediate, like from agent to the server immediately over it. In a nested setup, it would be 2 levels. So the agent for the nested servers would be forced to reattest every time it needed to rotate. And similarly, the agent for the nested underneath the nested servers, same thing on that level as well.
Did we get the serverless question? Any plans for extending serverless support, JOT SPIFFEs?
Yeah, we received requests for that in the past, and we put some thought on that, like initially, and also after the introduction of the SVD store plugin type. And the thing is that it would be very challenging to support JOT-SVD in the serverless case without breaking some principles that we have in SPIRE, and we don't yet have like a clear path to support this. I think one of the main challenges that are maybe intrinsic to the format itself. For example, we encourage the use of a single audience in the job SVID to limit the scope of any replayability. And that would be difficult to model with the SVD store plugin. At the same time, we also think that Noteworthy must have like an aggressive expiration value, and handling rotation in the context of the SVD store would be very challenging as well. So yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a clear path for that.
Any plan for ECS support? Did we answer that?
I think it has been in the radar, but not concrete plans.
Some folks asking for it, but I think that it's not clear how best to support it without some new SPIRE server APIs.
Good morning, folks. Yes, this is Dave Heller from Infor. I actually inquired about this several times and had a brief discussion on Slack about this. So without trying to solve it all here, it seems like in order to implement that on ECS, and there's an additional challenge in Fargate, but generally, what is the good a node attestation method? And now some folks I understand are using X509 POP, but I think there's also the possibility to develop a node attester that's based on AWS IAM role. That could serve and be more scalable and not require the static secret. For workload attestation, there's a challenge in the Fargate environment where the Unix node attester, which may be the only one that's currently available that would work there, isn't able to attest across namespaces as you would have in Fargate. So there was a discussion there yesterday. Someone else mentioned that they are working on a native ECS workload attester. So that would be one approach. And then the other possibility that was that I posited was what about how safe is it to forego workload attestation entirely in that case, given that you sort of have a one-to-one correspondence between the agent and the workload. But I think finding a solution for the attestation both those levels, we could have something that would, like, agent could run in a sidecar.
I've been informed that my connection is bad, so I'm sorry if I'm breaking up here, but I saw your message in the Slack, Dave, and I've been meaning to respond there and haven't had the time. I think, just like a couple high-level observations. The first is this is not the first time that we've heard about workload attestation wanting to bypass this. A lot of folks have, like some folks will bake one-to-one relationship between, EC2 instance and workload, and then they deploy, baked images of this workload. So there are other cases in which you have kind of this one-to-one relationship of agent to workload. And so there are other use cases which have this kind of need, and I don't think we have like a really elegant answer there now. I think there might even be an open issue in SPIRE about how to better handle this kind of deployment mode. And then the second one on the node attestation, we've been back and forth on this IAM role-based node attestation in AWS. I think that it's part of the hard part is that node attestation really tries to like find its way back to a unique kind of principle or entity. And when you talk about, attesting with an IAM role, it's really difficult to do that. And so one option here could be, and this has also been something that's come up several times, one option here could be to have a new facility in SPIRE server that would be like a credential exchange API or credential exchange RPC that could be used to say like, okay, I'm not trying to attest like a unique identity of a node or anything like that. Instead, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to swap one cred for another. And then you could come in with like AWS IAM creds and swap them out for an SPID. This is something that has come up several times. People say, oh, I have this thing and I want to go to an SPID. It's not really node attestation, but they
even
have
for the SVD store and serverless support, we explored that, and yeah, we also found some challenges there to make it with the security properties that we wanted. So yeah, I think that a lot of thought needs to be put there.
I think doing the attestation based on the IAM role itself is simple, and if that alone suffices, then it is probably more trustworthy than the second part that you were referring to, Evan, which I guess is going out and getting further information. How reliable and safe is that to form further selectors, sort of in the way the other attesters do. But if just getting the IAM role identity is sufficient for the attestation uniqueness, then that alone might be palatable from a security point of view.
There are some implementation details inside SPIRE core that make it harder. For example, we assume that the end result of a successful node attestation is that we have a somewhat persistent agent out there, and SPIRE server will write a line into the database as I have a new agent, and this is the agent ID, and tracks this thing. In the ECS world, and when you have things that are not really kind of these long-lived agents and instead are kind of coming and going, and you're not really able to resolve back to a unique identity, you end up having to do hacks like, well, I'm going to generate like a random thing, then I'm going to embed into the ID, and then I'm going to call that an agent. And so there are all these other kinds of things that you have to kind of work around. And there's a lot of assumptions in the node attester subsystem around being kind of like persistent agents out there that we can resolve a unique identity to. Which is why I suggested like an exchange API, maybe a easier way to do this, because we can say, oh, we're not doing any of that. Instead, what we're just trying to do is go from an IAM role to something else. We dealt with some of these challenges in like the Kubernetes service account token attester, because when you go get a Kubernetes service account token, it's a similar problem. You're not actually able to resolve it back down to a node. Now with projected service account token, you can do that, but we are in the process of like deprecating the service account token exactly for these kinds of reasons. And we would generate like a random ID, and it was a whole thing.
Cool.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, if you have more questions, like feel free to put them in the chat, and I think Evan and Augustine and Harding and Marcos will answer them. We do have the next presenter on. Eli, do you want to make the introduction? Oh, sorry, my bad.
So quick follow-up to that last question. Sorry, double mic, one mic. Evan, what you're describing would be analogous to the reverse of OIDC federation, rather than having exchange NSPID for an AWS cred. Could AWS call the OIDC endpoint on the SPIRE server and exchange that IAM binding or SDS token for a JOT?
It could be considered the reverse in that, we're going to AWS and we're giving AWS a SPIFFE ID thing, and we're getting back an AWS token. It could be considered the reverse in that now you can give an AWS token to SPIRE server and get back a SPIFFE ID.
Do you envision using the same API, or does the API have to be done for that?
No, I think this would have, like, in order to do that effectively, I think we probably need a new API. But as I mentioned, it's something that's come up in the past, and Augustine has looked at this. I think like the devil is in the details there, and exactly how we like write policy and do the mapping and all this kind of stuff. But from a high level, it would probably be like a new kind of credential exchange API, or maybe even a new component. We might be even to ship it as a new component.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. I think with that, we did switch the agenda out, so it's the Unity team. I don't know if you're on. I did see them.
Yes, hello.
I think Josh